This is OCCN 2020.
Well, welcome to Conversations with Candidates, sponsored by the Oberlin Community Candidates Night Planning Committee. I am Ray English, a resident of Oberlin and a member of the Oberlin City Council. Joining me are Allison Ricker and Lily Sandler, members of the Candidates Night Committee, and State Representative Joe Miller, who is standing for re-election to represent House District 56. The Republican candidate for District 56, Bradley Lacko, did not respond to our invitations. Before we get started, let me encourage viewers to read about all the candidates and their answers to questions from the League of Women Voters at vote411.org. We will begin with a 2-minute statement from Mr. Miller and then move on to questions from the Candidates Night Committee and those submitted by community members. Our conversation will take 15 minutes, allowing time to consider 6 questions of the many that were submitted by the public. Those additional questions will be shared with Mr. Miller after this session. So, Representative Miller, please begin.
Thank you, Ray, Lily, and Allison, and the rest of the Oberlin Dems and Oberlin League of Women Voters who have put this together. I'm happy to return. It's unfortunate we're in this COVID world where we're on Zoom, and I'm in my den here in Amherst, Ohio, having our discussion and our forum. And with that, you've asked for me to introduce myself with an opening statement. So I will continue with that. Once again, I'm Representative Joe Miller, an Amherst native. Grew up here in Lorain County, and I've been holding this position of state representative for the last 2 years. Before that, I was a city councilman at large in the city of Amherst for 6 years. And all during this time that I've been here, I've been happy to be involved in many organizations and outreach activities throughout the county. So why am I interested in holding this office? You don't really, some people don't, I didn't, maybe others do, but I didn't wake up saying I'm going to be a state rep. And matter of fact, I didn't wake up and say I'm going to be a councilman at large. It's just that when you get involved in your community and you care about your neighbors, you tend to start looking at some of the issues that you believe you can have a positive impact on. Sometimes you can do it through government, but that civic action is something that's always been in my family. It's always been something I believed in. So when we had a local issue, a couple of people pointed at me and said, you know what, you would be great at solving this issue and getting involved and being on council, and there you have it. I was a teacher most of my postgraduate or undergraduate professional career. Spent about 6 years in the private sector as well, but most of it's been in education. And so this is one of the issues that I find very important. So when I'm down in the State House, it's one of the pillars of where I put my efforts. But there are a lot of other things going on in our district that we need to look at, and that's environmental issues, social justice issues, healthcare issues. There's a variety. Especially the fact that we are looking for an economic revival, and I'm going to do whatever I can in the Office of State Rep to support that effort. So with that, let's turn it back over to you, Ray, and start firing the questions.
Well, thanks very much there, Representative Miller. You mentioned education, and our first question actually relates to that. Given reductions in Ohio's education budget, what measures do you support to provide equitable, quality public education for Ohio's children?
Well, right now we know that the funding is not equitable. It's been not even deemed inequitable, but it's been deemed unconstitutional. I've been supporting the Cup-Patterson effort to get the right formula, and that's by working with interested parties such as school district treasurers, superintendents, Board of Education, professional unions, and entities, all to come together to try to figure out how we can put money in the right places to provide an excellent education in our public school system. And I think it starts there. Private school systems are important. Many people want their kids to go to a private school or charter school or even homeschool, and that's their right. But our duty as citizens in America, and particularly in Ohio, is to provide a best of class public education system. And to do that, we need to fund it. And we need to make sure that funding is there for training, funding's there for curriculum advancement, funding's there for facilities, all in such a way that children have the opportunity to be in a place that's safe, where they can not only learn how to take a test, which unfortunately seems to be the biggest focus, but there's more to learning than just assessment through state and federal mandated tests. So we need to give the support systems for the social and emotional issues that children face. We need to put the money in a place to where we can provide support systems for those who are struggling with poverty or homelessness or transiency. There are so many things that impacting the educational outcomes of children that are really out of the control of teachers, and that community support system needs to be put in place. And I was happy to sponsor a bill with a Republican on the other side of the aisle in House Bill 154 to stop this idea of state takeovers, focus on mandated testing and fraudulent report cards to deem schools capable and effective in their education, and allow a community support type system to be set up. So.
Great. So move on to the next question here. Ohio has yet to address Governor DeWine's gun safety recommendations made more than a year ago after the Dayton shootings. Do you support gun control measures, and if so, which ones?
Well, there's no doubt with all the events that have happened, we've lost children in schools, we've lost community members, we've lost veterans, teenagers, adults to suicide, all by the end of a gun. Guns don't need to be banned, but good common sense gun reform needs to be implemented. I sit on the Federalism Committee and was actually put in the position of ranking member when the ranking member had to leave to go on duty. And I pushed back against these overreaches by gun lobbyists and gun groups to allow stand your ground, to not have to indicate whether you are carrying to a law enforcement officer, so duty to notify as they call it. And also I'm co-sponsoring bills that improve the safety and the locking up of guns away from those who shouldn't have them. I think there's some loopholes in the sales of guns. As we all know, it's a Second Amendment right, so there's a lot of overlap with the federal government on how we handle that. But I think there's still a lot of work to be done. I'm pushing hard on those fronts. I sit on the committees that deal with most gun laws, and I've even stood up on the floor and spoke out against some of these measures. I think the biggest one that we're going to be struggling with is stand your ground, or what I would call right to kill, by citizens to feel threatened in some form or fashion, thus taking away the Fifth Amendment right of every individual that's life is taken at the end of a gun, and that is to due process. So we have a lot of work to do on that front, and I'm going to keep pushing, and I was hoping DeWine would be able to bring along his Republicans, but in this particular case, the pressure is too much, and he decided that it's not a fight he's willing to take up right now.
Okay, thank you. Regarding police, what legislative steps to ensure safe and just policing policy and practice in our state do you support?
Well, there is a lot of reform that can happen and it needs to happen. One of the things that we're starting to see is there's inadequate funding for training, for body cams, dash cams, and that is causing, sorry, my apologies, my screen went there for a minute. We're seeing a lot of issues with, just like in the school systems, many departments are being underfunded, and that's because the lack of local government funds that have been given back to these cities that have seen a lot of economic loss over the last 20, 30 years. So couple of the reforms I'm working on is I'm working on House Bill 717 and 718. I'm working with the city of Lorain to allow lateral transfers, which other districts can do, but if you are a statutory city, you're not able to do according to the interpretation of the law. Also working with Lorain Police Department to allow for the demographics to improve among the police officers and the departments, so it's more reflective of their community. We're trying to get legislation together that will allow the police department to create a cadet program for 18 to 21-year-olds so that they can better screen and better diversify their police department. Bringing members from the community will help with the policing of their own community. And I'm working directly on a bill that I have sponsored personally on both those fronts.
Okay. So next question. What is your position on gerrymandering and also on transparency in campaign finance?
Big issues. And we have seen the impact of both of those directly here in Ohio. If you haven't seen the impact, then you're not paying attention. We have a gerrymandered state that has about a 50-50, we'll even say maybe 51-49% difference in partisanship and voting. As you know, President Obama took the vote in both his elections here in Ohio, but then the other party and their presidents took the vote in their elections. So we are every bit of the bellwether state. We are very balanced, but because of gerrymandering, we have a supermajority of Republicans controlling the General Assembly, and that is causing a lot of extremist bills to get in. Gerrymandering on both sides is bad. Whether you have, it pushes to the fringes the candidates, and they end up not looking to reach across the aisle and work for compromise, but to continue to feed their base, and their base starts to become the fringes, and that's when we get policy that is untenable. So gerrymandering is a big problem. The census is going to help. The new commission, the new commission that's been created under the new legislation to create somewhat of a less gerrymandered districts should help. It's still, in the end, though, it's the majority party that gets to pick the district lines, but it doesn't last for 10 years. It could last for only 4. So there's some changes there that'll help. And then the second part of that, you had stated, if you'd repeat again.
Just your position on transparency in campaign finance.
I'm a big fan of transparency in all government. You shine light, the cockroaches scatter. Bad behavior doesn't happen out in broad daylight for reasons. So for us, it's all about shining the light on government and being forthright with our constituents, our voters, and Ohioans as to where money is being received from, how it's being spent, and what is the result of that investment. And as we know, the Supreme Court, unfortunately, under Citizens United had ruled in such a way, I believe, that allows for this country to be less democratic. I think that unjustly balances somebody's vote. It's supposed to be one person, one vote. But with the amount of money that's corrupting our politics and the amount of money that people have to get involved in, it is causing what we see today. Legislators making decisions based on how much money they're going to receive in campaign finance or donations. So I think we have both sides of the party actually, I think it's about because of an election year and because of the fact they want to distance themselves from the speaker issue. I don't believe there was any push for a campaign finance reform on the other side of the aisle until this hit. And I think that once the election's over, you won't see much again from that side as well, unless we keep pushing. And I think you'll see that the Dems have every intention of pushing for campaign finance reform, not only at the state level, but at the federal level as well.
Well, thank you for that. Sort of related to the campaign finance issue, In light of the corruption scandal involving First Energy, as well as the ever worsening climate crisis, what is your position on House Bill 6? I know you supported it when it was originally passed, but specifically, do you support a repeal of the bill and reinstatement and expansion of the state's energy efficiency and renewable energy targets?
I think that's what made that bill unacceptable when it came back to conference committee from the Senate. There is something that's really, really important in my mind, and that is keeping as much carbon-free energy production in the system. Those two nuclear plants would do that. It's a huge base load. It provides security and stability in the energy production, and it provides it in a zero carbon-free emission way. My concern, and the reason I pushed that out of the House, is that we were hoping some of those standards, some of those energy efficiency pieces would get put back in the Senate. I wasn't willing to kill the bill just yet because there is something to be said about not allowing natural gas and coal and oil to fill the void that would have been created if these plants were not refueled and they were starting to be taken offline. And so I, right now, to answer the second piece of that question, absolutely believe that we need to repeal a bill that was pushed through in a corrupt way. And I don't think it was just in the House. So let me be clear that if it went all the way through the Senate and all the way through the governor, it wasn't just the House and a few members in the House that had been influenced by First Energy and some of these corrupt entities that were trying to push a bailout for the nuclear plant. I'm completely against handing money over for these nuclear plants now that after we gave that vote, they've proven with stock buybacks that they didn't need the money. This is a common theme among corporations. It's a common theme that I'm seeing throughout many of the policies that come about. It is a pay-to-play down in Columbus. I've come down there and have been disgusted by it and have tried to shine light on it and will continue to fight it. We need green renewable energy. I've been pushing for the Icebreaker Wind Project. I spent a lot of time on Zooms. I spent a lot of time having my own virtual town hall on that particular windmill project in the lake. We need a diverse portfolio of green energy to put into the grid. This needs to happen not just in Ohio, but across the United States, so we can move ourselves completely off of coal and continue to move off of fossil fuels in general, whether it be natural gas for fuel or for energy production. So I absolutely will be supporting returning those mandates. And I even have a bill in there just on kind of an offset. I have a bill that's trying to reduce the fees or the penalties, as I call it, for choosing to go with an EV or hybrid vehicle, electric vehicle, because that is the trend we should be moving towards. That is something that's I've been pushing for as well. So clean, green energy production is something that I care near and dear about. And our district sits on the lake. It's got beautiful environment that we enjoy here. And I think the continual push to fight against this climate change has got to start at the local level, the state level, and we got to keep pushing our federal government to do the same.
Okay, just to be clear on that, so you would not support any kind of financial support for the nuclear power plants at this point? You think that First Energy is not on the verge of going bankrupt? Those plants are not endangered?
Well, I'm not 100% sure they're not in danger, but I'm not 100% sure that the number one mission of First Energy or the entity that's being created was to keep them online, or was it to use that as a mechanism to receive millions and over the period of time up to billions of dollars in subsidies so that they can increase their profits and overcome the cost of running nuclear plants right now. since gas is so cheap, I think that they're using the nuclear argument to keep themselves very profitable, and they've proven that with this share buyback. So I'm not in favor of handing any more money over to the nuclear owners of these new nuclear energy plants, unless that ownership changed from First Energy.
Okay, just one final question. We are running short on time, so if you could keep this maybe to a minute, that would be great.
Okay.
With multiple sources of conflicting information and disinformation becoming the norm in our country, how will you build bridges across political lines to reduce the political polarization we are now experiencing?
Well, I think I'm going to take my education background and some of my business background, but I'm going to combine that to, and I have been doing that for the last 2 years down there, and that's going down there with the expectation that both sides will be listened to. If I want to seek to be understood or to understand, yes, I need first to listen, and to understand their argument before they're going to understand mine. So I think that one of the things you need to do is you need to get to the facts. You need to do it in a respectful way. You need to listen to both sides of the argument, and then you need to be truthful as to why you would choose to make a decision in policy. And I don't think that that's been the case. So my goal, once again, is to continue to work across the aisle. I've built many a relationship with members of the aisle, and actually co-sponsored bills with somebody that's ideologically on the other side on almost all issues, but on one particular issue I agreed on and was willing to work together towards good policy. And I think that's the approach that all politicians should be using, or they wouldn't, and politician wouldn't be a bad word anymore.
Well, thank you very much. That's Representative Joe Miller, candidate for Ohio House District 56. We appreciate you being part of Oberlin Candidates Night.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And stay safe, stay healthy.
Thank you for watching. The OCCN has been a nonpartisan collaboration for more than 25 years. These are the 10 organizations that work together to prepare for OCCN 2020. We thank them all.